How's everybody doing really? Come on, be honest, it's okay. I'm spinning, my head's spinning. There's so many good ideas today. It's really a thrill to be here as part of this communication and conversation. So thanks for inviting me, and let's see how we go. I'm going to kind of skip through this, but yes, I am the Packaging Development Director for GlaxoSmithKline, but my background is also in food, beverage, packaging as well. So it's going to be quite a general conversation about what really FMCG, so fast-moving consumer goods, packaging design and how that might work, and how we think about that, and then that how might influence selection of materials, and then how we take that forward. So I kind of want to move the conversation around a little bit. One of the joys I have of packaging is just how many different groups I'm involved with. In fact, it makes my job really interesting, and I love it. I could be talking to people in marketing, in corporate affairs, legal, distribution, logistics, quality, procurement. I mean, every department within a large company would be someone I'd be talking to at some stage. So when I say what does packaging impact, it impacts all of these things. And these things are really, really critical to have the way we think about packaging and packaging design. But what are the key aspects, depending on your perspective? So as a packaging developer, where do I start this conversation in my mind? I have a new product, we're going to launch this new product, it's going to be really interesting. Where do we start? It's always about product protection, it's always about consumer safety. And there can be no compromise here. We've talked about a lot of things today about different types of materials. How do we look at it at the end use? How does that packaging get used at another stage? But ultimately, the package is there to protect the product. I've been told many times in my 30 plus years in packaging development, Ian, we don't own a packaging company, we're a product making company, okay? So everything is around the product, and that's fine. So that's where we can't compromise. And the challenge that I have, I guess, as a packaging guy working for a large company is that's not always necessarily where the company sees packaging. If I had to say one thing about where a company that I work for would see packaging, it's cost. Packaging is a cost for large companies, okay? So bear in mind, I've been doing a few of these talks lately, talking to various people in NGOs and different agencies, and they keep bemoaning the fact we should be reducing more packaging. As I said, I've been working in this industry 30 years. From day one, 30 to 40% of my time is how do we take cost out, which means how do we take packaging out? How do we reduce the packaging that we use? So if you're thinking about a multinational company, the reduction of packaging is a given. It's a cost of entry. For the first 15 years of my career, we wrote that down as a cost saving. For the last 15 years of my career, we write it down as a cost saving and a sustainability benefit. But it's still something we've been pursuing for all the right reasons. So the challenge that we have is, how does the environment fit into that in this day and age as we're moving into the future? So that's really kind of setting my job up in terms of what it is that I have to get done. And I guess the other thing I probably want to talk about is, what could possibly go wrong with packaging? I mean, we don't really think about it. It works for us when we get it. And then when we're finished with it, we've got this problem to get rid of as a consumer. So when we think about it, just imagine this little black box in front of us here is the package. The product is on the inside, and everything else in the world is on the outside. What could go wrong? Well, we can have light oxidation. So light can penetrate the product and make it taste funny. It can get discolored. We have nutrient loss, so the product is no good. We can just have genuine mechanical damage. The package has to be strong enough to survive through the supply chain. And the irony is, in some of the markets that we're going into where we're seeing a lot of plastic leakage and forming ocean plastics, those supply chains need extra packaging because the supply chains just aren't as well developed as some of the Western supply chains potentially. So that's quite an interesting dichotomy or paradox, if you like, that we need more packaging to make sure it survives in that supply chain. And again, we can have all sorts of issues with infestation and product going off. We talk about permeation. So that's gases coming in or gases leaving the package. If you think about a food product, we don't want oxygen in the pack because it makes the product go off quickly. We're using packaging to try and extend the shelf life of our products. So how do we keep the oxygen out? Our friends in the carbonated soft drink beverage industry, how do they keep the carbon dioxide in so the product stays bubbly, and when you open it, you get that nice fizz? So it's really about designing the package to work in that format. And again, all sorts of issues can happen. I've seen packaging where we've moved from glass to plastic, And because of the permeation of moisture out of the product, it was a liquid product, we should be selling 250 mils. By the end of the shelf life, we're selling 240 because moisture's left the package. The product is illegal to sell now. So we're actually having issues in terms of how we've designed that package. Yeah, in 30 years, I've seen pretty much everything go wrong in packaging. So there's lots that can go wrong, so trust me. And again, thinking about absorption now, we can have, the flavors and aromas in packaging, you open the top of your coffee and get that nice hint of that aroma coming off the top. The chemicals to do that are very small in number, so it's quite easy for those chemicals to actually get absorbed into the package itself, and when you just don't get that flavour hit that you might have had if you don't design the right package. Think about some of those noodle products, very sharp noodles. Can they actually penetrate from the inside and destroy the pack? Again, we have the same issue of mechanical damage, but from the inside out. So, there's one more. So we can also think about what can go wrong just in terms of the package design itself, whether it's around additives that we might add to make the package flow well over a machine in terms of its forming, the way it performs in the manufacturing facility, the colours that we use, do they stay fixed within the package or do they come into the package itself? So really not much can go wrong. or everything can go wrong. And these are the dilemmas that confront us. And it's with these things in mind that we start to think about what is the material that we should use for our package. And that really is our starting point. So with that in mind, this is our challenge, I guess, in terms of how do we now start to manage the environmental impact of our packaging, but we don't compromise on our product quality or consumer safety. And there's a lot happening in that space right now, and it's really exploded for us in the last 2 or 3 years especially. I really like this slide today because all I've heard today is it's all about this partnership between government, industry and the consumer. It's about education. How do we bring people along on the journey? It's about government making changes that reflect what's possible and also how industry can perform better. So some examples here. Pete asked the question before, right, about, so what do you think about this by 2030? All plastics packaging placed on the EU market will either be reusable or recyclable in a cost-effective way. How does that make you feel? It's pretty confronting, Pete, right? We've got 12 years to get this right. Some markets even sooner. Think about what's happening in India. They're pushing for 2022. Already legislating at the moment to make that happen. 29 states in India, 16 have already put legislation in place. What's happening in terms of Australia's making changes, not actually legislative ones, but starting to think about what that looks like. It's a double-edged sword, this one, because it means we need to make changes, but it also empowers someone like me to speak to his business and say, guys, if we don't get this done by 2030, is our product actually going to be legal to sell? So now we've got opportunities to actually engage in those types of conversations. So it's confronting and energizing at once, which is good fun. So industry's already on board with this. And I could put up 30 companies up here if you like in terms of who's made these commitments. And I'm sorry, I don't know why I went with these ones, but I did. I think it's an interesting mix. Procter & Gamble, think about Mondelez have just jumped on board in the last couple of weeks. Nestle, Unilever, so those large multinationals are already making these types of commitments. I find it interesting, Tesco, Walmart are making commitments in this space. They have huge generic brands, their own home brands themselves, so they bring their own packaging in, but they're already putting their stamp on what these changes could be and how they will influence. I can tell you right now, they're making calls to our corporate governance people saying, so what are you guys doing? So the pressure flows and it grows. And it becomes really interesting to see where that can actually finish up and stand. Amcor's made the commitment, part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation commitment. I struggle to say even McDonald's. It's not fair to say even McDonald's. But in terms of fast food, in terms of that convenience society, and we were talking about convenience today and a little disparagingly, for guys like McDonald's to actually jump into this place as well and actually start to talk about forest stewardship certification and being part of that program is exciting and again, energizing to think where that could take us. So we've got government pushing us, which is, I'm not meant to agree with that, but it does make a better conversation internally. We've got industry already starting to move into this space. So I stole this slide from Adept Packaging. Pratik Lal and his team really did a nice job with this because this is now the way we need to be thinking as packaging developers and technologists. How do we evaluate each component? So think about a primary pack on shelf, the secondary pack that goes around and holds the 6-pack of clusters together. What does that look like? There's changes in that space. What does that tertiary pack look like, the actual shipping carton? Like I said, in some markets it needs to be very strong to survive. In others it doesn't have to be as strong. Does it need to be cardboard? If it's cardboard, how do we recycle it? Know your source. Where does this material come from, right? Are we comfortable that this material is actually being sourced from the right location? Think about this from a life cycle approach. How does it work in distribution? When we load the truck, is it 60% full, the truck, 80% full? Why isn't it 100% full? When we return the truck, is it returning empty? How do we make sure that we can close that loop in terms of truck movements as well? Everything contributes to the life cycle of our products. And we need to think about designing for recyclability. And we're having a conversation at lunch today, actually. Sorry, this presentation's kind of all over the place today because it's been a really interesting day and a lot of really interesting discussions. And one of the things we talked about was that for 2025, I can't tell you necessarily what the right package format is to deliver the right recyclable solution now. We heard about chemical recycling today, and that's further advanced than I thought, but it's still got a long way to go. Is it about thinking about laminated films where they're quite complex in structure, and the reason we do that is to get the shelf life and the product protection and all those things we talked about on that earlier slide. How do we make them more simple so that they can actually be recycled rather than just being disposed of? Or do I not need to do that now because chemical recycling will be ready? So I'm in a position where I've got to run 3, 4, 5 things in parallel right now. Fortunately, I've got good partners to work with in that space who can help me explore option A, B, C, and D for the next 2 years and see which one takes us forward and then find the right recycle solution if it's recycle or reuse solution if it's reuse. So it's a scary time, but it's a really invigorating time. And speaking of time, I'm out. So it's a conversation I'm really excited about. It's a conversation I enjoy, and thank you for your time today. Cheers.